Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. General, we're going to talk about the possible terrorist attacks in Europe and how the soldiers are spending Christmas. But first, let's talk about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. President Barack Obama signed landmark legislation today, a landmark law repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This was a campaign promise he made. For liberals, they say it took a long time to get to this step.
You know, I think we need to recognize the basis. The basis for this is obviously cultural change, but it's based upon the readiness of the United States military. And therefore, even though that bill was signed, you still have to wait for the rest of the story. Will it, in fact, affect readiness of the United States military? That story is yet to be told, and that's done through evaluations. It's done through different mechanics that take the mission of a particular unit and determine whether, in fact, that mission can be, in fact, completed. When you start dealing with retention, that means retention of qualified personnel, it will undoubtedly affect the mission capability. How long will it take to overcome that? Basically,
you're talking about the wording that's in this law, and basically it cannot damage or compromise combat readiness.
But,
you know, the real question, General, who determines that? Is it the President or the generals in the field?
It's done through an evaluation system by the Department of Defense itself and some outside agencies to look at the mission of the unit and to look at that unit's capability to fulfill that mission. That determines readiness. And I think if that's compromised, you might see some stay of this whole application. Keeping in mind, even if the process was signed as it was, you're talking about a year before it's actually implemented. So I think what we're doing now is looking at a time that will be in between. Will it affect retention? Will it affect enlistments? And the bottom line, after all is said and done, will it in fact affect the readiness of the United States military to fulfill its mission?
All right, let's play politics. You're talking about a year, so we're talking about maybe one more year of President Obama's administration. Let's say he doesn't get reelected. Then at that point, do you see it get, because now it's a political issue all over again for the next person coming in?
You know, it could be, and the only thing that would be a basis for having us revisit it as far as instituting some other policy would be to demonstrate that it has in fact affected the military readiness. And that can only be determined after you look, apply the systems, and there are an awful lot of systems that are going to be affected by this. Whether in fact all these tangential systems will affect the morale of the soldier and what that morale will translate to in reference to the readiness of a unit. And I know I keep talking about readiness, but that's the basis of justifying the program to begin with. If it affects readiness, you could in fact see perhaps either a substantial adjustment to the policy or even way out on the other side of this, an institution back to what we had before, and that was Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Are you talking about maybe educating the troops more, you know, how sexual orientation should be handled, let's say in the barracks?
Absolutely. You know, I've been around for quite some time now. I saw when the first female came in to the Rhode Island National Guard, that required a lot of education. Then we got into diversity training, and that had to do with the different cultures coming into the Guard. That required education. In the last decade, the focus of the education had to do with not only diversity, but sexual harassment. And when you talk about sexual harassment, then you enter into that a brand new culture system. Now you're talking about entering into the gay and lesbian community. That undoubtedly will be part of the education program as to how to deal with someone who's openly gay serving right next to you in the same unit and not affecting the readiness of that unit.
What about soldiers who have left? You see the possibility of them coming back?
I think there's a possibility it could reapply because the rules have changed now. Every year there's a whole new set of criterion that comes out to determine eligibility to join the military. One could do with weight, physical fitness, sexual orientation in this particular case, and other considerations. So I think you might see an adjustment to the yearly criterion that the Department of Defense puts out for membership in the Guard, either to rejoin, re-enlist, or to be retained within the Guard, as well as the entire military.
So in your opinion, where do you see this going?
Well, I think we need to look at the next year as to exactly what it's going to surface, how is it going to affect the overall readiness of the unit, and what systems are going to be used to make that determination.
This is kind of a feather in President Obama's cap. He's been on somewhat of a roll, so to speak, over the last couple of weeks.
Well, I think, you know, it fulfilled a campaign promise that he made. But like any other promise, you can make it, you can satisfy a certain percentage of the American population, but I think everyone subscribes to the fact that you need a strong military. It needs to be a ready military. And I do believe that even a portion of the liberal individuals that he's trying to satisfy with a campaign promise will understand if it affects readiness of a unit, we need to revisit it. And so I think, although he may be successful at this particular point, the rest of the story is yet to be told.
Well, he's been trying to get the Republicans on his side. I mean, we're going to talk about this in a second too. The treaty with Russia, also, you know, the don't ask, don't tell policy, and the Bush-era tax cuts and unemployment benefits for another 13 months. All of this, really, in general, in a span of what, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think what he did was, I believe he's reacting to what appeared to be a significant vote on from the American people, saying they don't like his job performance. And for him to even suggest that he may be reelected, he has to move from a far left position more to the right. And the economy is the basis. Just like Bush 1 lost the election, he was a one-term president because of the economy. So after all is said and done, this policy, that promise, this policy, if the economy doesn't improve significantly, I think you're looking at a one-term president. So he, in turn, is looking to move further to the right in order to gain more popularity to be able to at least have a chance at a second-term re-election.
All right, General, as of this taping, the Senate is ready to approve the major nuclear arms pact with Russia. Senator John Kerry is saying, quote, "We are on the brink of writing the next chapter in the 40-year history of wrestling with nuclear weapons. We're only talking about reducing these warheads by about 600. Both countries could still blow each other up and blow the world up, too, when you think about it."
You're absolutely right. But what we had throughout the entire Cold War, and the reason we won the Cold War, was to be able to have Russia and the Soviet Union at the time understand that the United States had first strike capability, meaning that we were going to negotiate from a strong point of view. When you have parity in a program, you've lost quite a leverage to be able to make your point that we don't want to go to war. But if we have to go to war, we have first strike capability, and we're going to be able to defeat you before you even launch one missile. When that's taken away, you take away a significant part of your ability to negotiate a peaceful resolution to whatever differences we have between what is now Russia and the United States.
What happens if the United States strikes first with this new treaty?
I don't think you'd be able to defeat the Russia without having a substantial return of nuclear weapons on the United States. And I think that I'm concerned about that. Even if you say 1,500 nuclear weapons and you talk an average of 10 to maybe perhaps as much as 50 megatons of weapon landing on the United States at any one time, everybody loses. But if you have first strike capability, meaning you have more weapons and the ability to overtake them before they have a chance to launch a nuclear weapon against us, that, I think, has sustained us without going to war for the past number of years. And I believe that this is giving them a little bit of an edge into taking away that superiority and putting us on a parity basis.
Well, this treaty right here, what does that present? Some problems down the road with other countries, too?
I think it does. And when you talk about countries depending on the United States to protect them, they'll say, well, you know, if you have parity with Russia and you're not going to be able to do anything if they attack us, how can you return it?
You're talking about Israel, too, especially?
I'm talking about any country that depends on the United States for their own security. And besides that, you know, we're also simultaneously working on a missile defense system for Europe. So the whole thing is, I think, so fragile that when you start disturbing the amount of capability we have to be able to have a definitive edge against any nuclear aggression against either us or our allies, that's taking away a significant leveraging point that we have in any future negotiations or our ability to sustain peace as we know it.
General, Christmas is this week, and there have been terror threats in Britain and in Rome. How are the U.S. soldiers dealing with all of this?
Well, you know, they're concerned, as well as not only the soldiers but the civilians themselves. They're concerned that, you know, they may very well be targets of either individual terrorism or certainly a strategic terrorist move. And I say that trying to differentiate the difference between being an individual act of terrorism where one or two individuals are affected, or perhaps a suicide bomb somewhere within the vicinity of soldiers, as we've seen so many times in the past, versus a strategic one that would affect an entire region or a city. So they're in the midst of all this, away from home, not having the same kind of security considerations that we enjoy in the United States at this particular point. So I'm sure that they're concerned, but at the same time, that's not governing how they operate on a day-to-day basis.
Well, General, there are about 600,000 Christians in that area, and as a matter of fact, the Iraqi Christians have called off festivities for this week because of the concern of more bombings. That Baghdad church that was hit, that left about 70 people dead. So, I mean, so they're also concerned, too, about expressing their religious beliefs.
They are, and when you talk about it in the context that we're talking about it right now is you begin to wonder whether they've already won this war on terror. When you start not doing things that you believe in, and we've done it for so many years as a country, and you start taking that away, then have we already lost the war on terror? Because I think if we stop and we curtail what we enjoy as Americans, then that leads me to believe that perhaps they're making some headway into winning the war on terror. And I hope we don't see that.
Just talking to soldiers, they say it's tough to be away from home at any time. Thanksgiving, Easter is tough. But they say Christmas, especially soldiers with kids, that's the most difficult time.
It is a tremendous psychological thing to be away from your family. And to have little children, perhaps that you haven't even had the experience of having them in your arms. And this is the first Christmas they're going to be experiencing, and you're not here with them. Certainly the internet and the capability we have of information technology, puts them on a screen. You can't touch them. You can just begin to understand how much of a tremendous impact that has, knowing they're so close you can see them, but you can't put your hands on them. And I think that's probably going to be more the case as we get closer and closer to the holiday. And during the holiday season, kids really, this is a time for young children to experience for the first time, and you want to see that look on their face for the first time, and they still believe that's really what Christmas is all about, and the belief that what Christmas is intended to do, that's to bring families together, and on the basis of recognizing that Christmas is a day when we all exude our Christian beliefs.
What do we have, about 800 local troops overseas?
Not yet. We should have about 800 troops actually deployed sometime around January or February, thereabouts, to level out what we have committed for deployment. Right now I think we have about maybe between 400 and 500 out, another three to go before the end of the February time frame.
All right, General, Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy
Christmas
New Year.
to you, and have a good one.
And thanks for watching.